In the brutal arithmetic of modern warfare, you cannot protect everything. For decades, Soviet and Russian military doctrine prided itself on possessing the most dense, multi-layered integrated air defense network on Earth. From the long-range S-400 Triumph to the tactical point defense Panzer S-1, the airspace above Russian forces was supposed to be an impenetrable dome. But in 2026, that dome is fracturing as Ukrainian long-range strike drones continuously penetrate hundreds of kilometers deep into the Russian Federation, striking oil refineries, ammunition depots, and military airfields. The Kremlin faces a catastrophic dilemma. To protect the critical infrastructure of Moscow and St. Petersburg, the psychological and economic heart of the state, Russia has been forced to make a desperate strategic compromise, stripping its front lines of tactical air defenses. Every Panzer missile system deployed to guard a refinery near Moscow is one less system protecting a Russian mechanized column in Pokrovsk. This is the story of how asymmetric drone warfare forced a superpower into tactical nakedness and how Ukraine exploited these gaps to reshape the battlefield.
To understand the gravity of this shift, we must look at the technical ecosystem of Russian air defense. Russia's doctrine relies on a three-tiered system. At the strategic layer, systems like the S-300 and S-400 engage targets hundreds of kilometers away. But these behemoths have a fatal flaw. They are blind to low-flying, slow-moving threats.
Enter the SHORAD short-range air defense. Systems like the Panzer S-1 and the Tor M2 were specifically engineered to act as the final line of defense. The Panzer, equipped with dual 30mm autocannons and 12 radio command-guided missiles, was designed to protect higher-value assets from cruise missiles, precision bombs, and low-flying aircraft. However, Soviet engineers never anticipated the drone revolution. Ukraine's adaptation of cheap, long-range kamikaze drones, often constructed from fiberglass and powered by basic internal combustion engines, changed the economic equation of war. A single Panzer missile can cost upwards of $100,000. The drone it targets might cost less than $5,000, but the financial cost is only half the problem. The real bottleneck is production and depletion. As Ukraine scaled up its domestic drone program, launching mass waves of dozens of drones deep into Russian territory, Russia's air defense grid began to experience target saturation. The radars can track them, but the launchers quickly run out of ready-to-fire missiles. The true strategic turning point of this campaign arrived when Ukraine systematically turned its crosshairs toward Russia's economic engine, its vast oil refining capacity. By deliberately disabling highly specialized irreplaceable distillation towers deep within the Russian interior, Kyiv didn't just disrupt fuel logistics, they directly threatened to paralyze the Kremlin's primary source of war funding. The political fallout for the Russian Ministry of Defense was immediate, severe, and absolute. High-definition images and geolocated videos of massive burning petrochemical complexes, many within a short driving distance of Moscow itself, flooded social media. This was a domestic crisis that could not be censored or hidden from the public. The Kremlin simply could not afford to look weak or defenseless in its own backyard. Faced with an escalating industrial disaster, Moscow resorted to a desperate triage of its vital military assets. Western satellite imagery and frontline intelligence reports soon confirmed a deeply disturbing trend for Russian field commanders. Tactical short-range air defense units, or SHORAD, began rapidly vanishing from the occupied territories of Ukraine. Highly capable Panzer S-1 and Tor M2 systems were hastily packed onto flatbed trucks and rail cars. They were stripped directly from active combat zones and reassigned to the outskirts of major Russian cities and critical economic infrastructure. This massive reallocation exposed a fundamental mathematical flaw in Russian military resource distribution. Despite its massive size, Russia simply does not possess enough short-range air defense systems to simultaneously protect a chaotic 1,000-kilometer active front line and thousands of square kilometers of vulnerable domestic industrial infrastructure. By aggressively forcing Russia to defend Moscow and its economic lifelines, Ukraine successfully executed a classic textbook military strategy. They forced the enemy to dilute their forces. The frontline umbrella was broken, leaving Russian trenches exposed to devastating tactical strikes, all because the Kremlin was forced to protect its own burning backyard. The consequences on the front lines were immediate and devastating. In axes of advancement like Pokrovsk, Kupiansk, and the Zaporizhia region, Russian ground forces suddenly found their localized air defense umbrella severely compromised. Without the protection of mobile systems like the Tor and Pantsir, Russian frontline assets became easy prey. Ukraine capitalized on this vulnerability by unleashing two primary airborne threats: reconnaissance drones and FPV first-person view loitering munitions. In the past, a Russian electronic warfare unit or artillery battery would be shielded by a nearby SHORAD vehicle capable of downing incoming reconnaissance drones. With those systems reassigned to the rear, Ukrainian high-altitude reconnaissance drones like the Shark or Leleka can now linger over Russian positions with impunity. They feed real-time coordinates back to Ukrainian artillery units operating American-supplied HIMARS or Western 155mm precision artillery. Furthermore, Russian mechanized assaults have turned into meat grinders. Without tactical air defense to intercept or jam low-altitude threats, waves of Ukrainian FPV drones can strike Russian armored vehicles, tanks, and logistics trucks with surgical precision. The lack of point defense systems means that even multi-million-dollar T-90M tanks are being disabled by a series of $500 drones striking their weakest armor points. This tactical reality exposes a massive fundamental doctrinal disconnect within the Russian high command. Historically, Russian military theory was built upon a rigid assumption any future large-scale conflict would involve localized air superiority, or at the very least a clearly defined linear front line where air defense assets could face forward to intercept incoming threats. Instead, they are trapped in a modern war of attrition with no safe rear. The front line is no longer a static line drawn on a map. The front line is everywhere. Western military analysts note that Russia's deeply ingrained reliance on rigid, highly centralized command and control structures has profoundly exacerbated this crisis. In the Russian system, field commanders possess almost no operational autonomy. They cannot easily adapt to fast-moving battlefield dynamics or dynamically request immediate, localized air defense support when their assigned assets are suddenly stripped away by bureaucratic orders coming directly from Moscow. When a radar unit is reallocated to protect a distant oligarch's refinery, the local frontline commander is simply left exposed, unable to challenge the decision. To desperately compensate for these gaping holes in their multi-layered defense network, Russia has resorted to jury-rigged ad hoc solutions that border on tactical desperation. Across the vast Russian interior, logistics units have begun deploying older, completely obsolescent anti-aircraft guns such as the Soviet-era Zu-23-2 crudely mounted on the beds of civilian flatbed trucks. Even more startling, the military has begun equipping frontline soldiers and rearguard security personnel with commercial handheld shotguns, effectively tasking them to act as human last resort anti-drone squads. But these rudimentary manual tactics are a far cry from the automated radar-guided deadly precision of a fully operational Panzer S-1 system. A soldier with a shotgun or a manual anti-aircraft gun from the 1960s stands little chance against a low observable autonomous composite drone flying at 150 miles per hour in pitch-black darkness. These are not strategic adaptations. These are frantic stopgap measures designed to mask a catastrophic systemic failure. Russia's Iron Dome has not just been bypassed, its underlying military doctrine has been rendered completely obsolete by the relentless evolution of asymmetric warfare. By threatening the capital, Ukraine forced Russia's hand. The choice was clear: protect the state's political survival at home or protect the soldiers on the front line. The Kremlin chose the home front. The result is a Russian military machine that, despite its massive firepower and numerical advantages, is fighting with its eyes partially blinded and its shield cracked. In the theater of modern conflict, the side that cannot control its tactical airspace is doomed to bleed out one drone strike at a time. As long as Moscow remains paranoid about its own sky, the Russian soldier on the front line will continue to pay the ultimate price. But the shifting tides of this drone war raise a critical question. How long can Russia sustain this defensive triage before its front lines completely collapse? If you found this deep dive into military strategy insightful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Can modern armor ever truly survive the age of the drone? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next briefing.